Hi everybody. What I would love to do today is to introduce you to some of the species of the trees that have been growing in this piece of land that I own. As you might know, I bought this land almost 8 years back as a completely barren, completely deforested piece of land. And my aim was to grow as many indigenous species of trees as possible. Well, I've largely stuck to that principle. I've also got a few mahoganies, a few paradise trees, etc., which are not really indigenous in its strict sense. However, I do have a lot of common native species like the teak, neem, Cassia Fistula, and some rare ones like the star gooseberry, hog plum, Arjuna tree, Pungamia pinnata, Indian gooseberry, etc. As you can now see, just in a span of 7 to 8 years, nature has really worked her magic. And many of these trees have grown anywhere from 20 feet to as tall as 40 feet with very little human interventions. So let's go and see a few samples.
Let's start here. This is a mahogany. Mahoganies are historically they were not really grown in this part of the world, but over the past few decades, a lot of people are planting a lot of mahoganies, which is not super useful, especially if it is done at the expense of native trees. But these are fast-growing, low-maintenance trees, so I have a few of them on my boundaries because they do provide greenery and they just grow quite quick. So I just love to have them around, at least a few in number. This is what's called a paradise tree. In Malayalam, we call it Lakshmi Taru. Again, this is one of those trees which have historically not been part of the forests in this part. This is predominantly from the American continent. I think they are present both in South America, Central America, as well as in United States, especially in areas around Florida. The paradise tree has nuts which give oil, and there is a belief that the oil of this tree is quite medicinal in properties. So that is one of the reasons it has been increasingly being planted in this spot these days. Very strange branching, as you can see, and then they have very thick leaves. But the most typical characteristic is this kind of a branching, very broad, almost perpendicular branching from the main trunk. So that is the paradise tree. Beyond the paradise tree, unfortunately, I cannot go there because the weeds have quite grown up, and I really don't want to risk going there. We have seen a couple of snakes moving about yesterday, so I'll just skip going close there into the bush. But that is a star gooseberry tree. It's not really a forest tree in the sense that they do produce fruits, and they are grown, at least in the olden times, they used to be grown in the backyard of many houses. These days it has kind of become a rarity. I don't see them as often even in the rural areas in India these days. It's a star gooseberry. In Malayalam we call it arinelli. It's a cousin of the Indian gooseberry or nellika. The one behind that, where you can probably see the bird eating a worm, that's also another mahogany. And behind the mahogany you have the state flower of Kerala. That one tall in the middle is the Cassia Fistula, which is the state flower of Kerala. Typically in the summer months they have beautiful yellow flowers, grown quite tall. Let me see if I can take another path to reach it. Okay, let me go in. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a stick to kind of clear the way, so that if there are indeed snakes, they get an opportunity to go away, really. Typically snakes bite only when you step on them. So what we typically do is kind of make enough noise, giving it a chance to run away. That's a neem. It's kind of falling down. There's a mango. That's a mango there. That's a mango. This one is a neem. It's good to see some naturally growing trees. This is the Cassia Fistula that I was mentioning, which is like the state flower of Kerala almost. Very significant. The flower, the yellow flowers of Cassia is very significant. In Malayalam we call it Kanikonna. It's part of one of our most important festival called Vishu, which comes in the summer. In the summer they have beautiful yellow flowers. So let me see if I can go a bit closer to it. Yeah, so these are the leaves. New leaves are sprouting because of the rain. Next to the cassia there, that one is the hog plum. Hog plum, in Malayalam we call it ambaranga. It's used primarily for pickles. I think there is even one of the plums there. I don't know if you can see. That is the hog plum or ambaranga. So again, not a hardcore forest tree, but more, it used to be grown a lot on houses, increasingly becoming rarer, unfortunately, with everybody cutting all backyard trees and concreting them up, unfortunately. Close to this boundary here I have a teak. Teak is a dry deciduous commercial timber tree. It's quite popular in this part of the state because the timber is extremely commercially viable for farmers. It's used for furniture, used for building houses. Quite a strong hardwood tree, so it is grown quite a lot in this, especially in the more drier regions of the state of Kerala. In Malayalam we call it teak. This one here is a mahogany, one of the larger ones. This is about 8 years old, and as you can see, even in 8 years they have grown quite well. It must be around 30 feet already, and that's one of the reasons I love mahoganies on the boundaries, because they do provide a nice look for the whole area. Mahogany is again a commercial timber tree that is increasingly being grown, so I'm not quite much in favor because it's not really an indigenous tree. This is a pongamia. Pongamia in local language is called lunga. Again, look at the beautiful foliage this tree has already had in just 6 to 7 years. This is typically used in various bus stops in rural India as a shade tree, and a lot of the village congregate around this tree. It's a very social kind of a purpose of this tree. It's undergrowth because of the rain, and more importantly, how the forest floor looks. As you can see, primarily all this foliage that has fallen is now decaying, and this decaying foliage is what gonna give fertilize this soil and create the topsoil, the fertile humus for the topsoil. So that is the advantage of having all these forest trees. Their foliage gives back to the soil. Last one I'm going to introduce today, I cannot go further. A lot of mosquitoes and insects around. This is the Arjuna tree, Arjuna terminalia. In Malayalam we call it Neem. Look at the trunk. In just about 8 years it is almost looking like a full grown tree. Of course it's not full grown, it can grow for another 300 years I'm sure. But this is almost already, if I am not wrong, must be around 35 feet already, and the trunk is quite thick. This is like providing nests and real estate for, I don't know, like 40-50 birds. I have seen around 40-50 birds on this tree on most evenings. Such a beautiful tree and one of my favorite trees. This one, the last one here, it is Neem. It is quite nicely grown. That's a bamboo, by the way. Neem is obviously one of my favorite trees too, because they just makes the air so fresh, and when the wind blows, you can it just gives an amazing feel overall. It's also medicinal in properties. The leaves are used for various remedies by the rural folk, and even in Ayurveda. So this is not really any more of forestry as such. A lot of people have it close to their homes and use it for medicines and stuff. Okay, with that, it's a very sunny day today. I'll take a break. So you can see not a lot of clouds. You can see all the trees which have grown the canopy post the monsoon. It just looks so beautiful. So bye bye.